Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show, Fernando.
Welcome to the show, guys.
You excited about this one?
I'm excited, yes,
You have no idea what we're doing, even though
no idea.
you should know what we're doing because you talked to this guy for 45 minutes the other day.
Yes, we did.
I talked to him for 10 minutes this morning. I changed everything.
No, I know. I mean, we talked about this before.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just rather to keep my speakers, and I say, fine.
Apparently, he had a weekend where he was like, you know what?
He say that. He told me, listen, I have to go home, process whatever you say, and then I can decide, or I can come back and say, you know what, now let's do something else. And I'm like, all right, sounds good.
So what are we talking about? We have a 2008 Chrysler Town Country. So let's take a look inside and see what the factory has, see what we want to retain, see what we can't retain. Let's just jump in. I'm a big fan of these stow and go minivans. I actually thought about getting one of these instead of my Mustang just because of, well, it's roomy. But then I realized I'm the only one in it and, well, didn't need it. This guy has the dual drop down monitor system along with the in-dash unit. Has the older navigation, so he's using this Garmin right now. And then behind that is the DVD player. I love the custom mount made out of the old wine box. That's pretty cool. We can pull that out. This is connected to all three monitors. We're gonna try to retain that. And then it does have a backup camera, which has got a good view of the ceiling right now. The back door is open. Now, as far as the backup camera goes, especially with these older vehicles, sometimes it might be better just to replace it with the factory. Only because the factory really, well, they're not that expensive. Keep in mind though, that the factory's resolution is only so good. And it might not actually be the lens on the camera or something like that that's bad. It just might be a low-res camera, and that's why you might want to replace it with a newer one. He's button cleaned the lens on this camera. He's like, yeah, we'll see what it looks like. I can buy a new one from the factory for 150 bucks. I was like, you probably get it on eBay cheaper. The nice thing about doing that is all you have to do is unplug this camera, plug the new one in, and you're done. You don't have to run any wires. That's why the argument for it is kind of good. Let's take a look at the equipment that we are going to be taking all this stuff out with. I'm excited about this. This is going to be fun. First off, for all the integration needs, we'll be doing our iData interface. So we're using the RR. This takes the CH1 harness, and then the AV-CH1 is what's going to allow us to retain our backup camera and overheads and whatnot. We'll test all of this once we get to it to see what we can retain, what we can't retain, what works, what doesn't work. Speaker-wise, we are going to do our favorites, the KFC 6903Cs, 3.5s on the top of the dash, 6x9s on the lower door. We're gonna have a bass knob to power one of our favorites, the X802.5 5-channel amp. The 5-channel amp, we're going to do a front stage upgrade with. That means that that amp is going to just power these speakers here. Channels 1 and 2 will be powering those. Channels 3 and 4 will be powering that. The radio will be powering what is already installed in the rear. He wants a Garmin navigation system. Even though CarPlay, Android Auto, where he lives, the navigation works better. He does a lot of traveling, and he sometimes... Anyways, he wants the Garmin nav. We're going to do the DNX 697S. For this particular vehicle. It also has a DVD CD player built into it because we may need that with the overheads, we may not. And then we'll be installing a standalone USB. We need an antenna adapter, which we'll talk about, and of course a dash kit. Once we get over to that, we'll describe all of the funness that is those. In the meantime, we need to get some parts of the car apart, like the radio, get that out of the dash. Because if I recall, I haven't done one of these in a minute, but that dash is really tight. Like getting a full-size chassis in there, it's gonna be rough. Yay. Let's start with that first. Join me in the vehicle, guys. This car does have steering wheel controls. They're located on the back of the steering wheel here. Chrysler typically does that. If you've never worked on one before and you're like, there's no buttons, check behind the steering wheel. We want to make sure we program those in, and the RR will do that. Get this radio out of the dash. We have to start by removing the top piece here, and there's two little tiny clips that open up and allow us to remove these two screws. For that, we're going to use our really thin pry tool. Open both the doors. Phillips screw. When working on cars, we like to use these little totes. Put all our screws and parts in. We have a couple of them depending on where we're working at on the car. If you're doing this at your house, just steal your wife's Tupperware. Works really nice. using cup holders and stuff like that do work. The problem is that sometimes you need to get those parts of the car out, and then you knock all the screws and you could possibly lose them. Rubber totes are pretty awesome. That gets this top piece free. However, we do need to remove this whole back piece here along with these A-pillars. We got a lot of work to do to get this piece out. Now this does have airbag side pillars. It's just got these little clips that you need extra, it's an extra step. It's kind of a pain, but you also need to remove the side of the dash here. That same tool will allow you to do that. There's 3 of these airbag clips along this here. They just have a clip here at the top and then they extend and you pry it off. I mean, it's fairly simple. You saw how quick I got it off. The reason why you have to pull them off is all the way up at the front of the dasher, there's a little tongue that sticks over like this. Now that side is 2 screws that we have to get off. For that, I'm switching to my plastic pry tool because this is plastic on plastic, and this is like a rubber Torx screw, T30. Because of the screws, this does not have any of the clips on it like the driver's side has. This also has that same tongue that sticks over here onto the side. To get this top piece up, we'll use that same plastic pry tool and we'll slowly work our way across the dash. This is probably the scariest part of the day. Pull the whole dash this way and it'll unclip, and then find someplace very flat and out of the way to set this on. Now the reality is you could just lift this up like this, remove all of this and be perfectly fine. Taking this whole piece off probably isn't totally necessary, but because we are going to be in here with amplifiers and stuff like that, I don't want to have this in my way. There's 2 Phillips screws towards the back here that if you look in the windshield, you can actually see pretty well. While I have my right angle tool on, I'm also going to remove the speakers from the dash. This is the little guy here that we're replacing. We'll take a look at that once we get over to the bench. Clip the 2 screw hole panels, clip them back into place because they could fall out while you're moving this thing around. You definitely don't want to lose them. Unlike most Dodge dashes, this one is way overcomplicated. We're going to have 2 screws up here and you'd think, yay, this is the end of it, but the reality is no. Now we have to move down here to the bottom, get this out of the way so that we can get this part out. On the side here, there's 3 nylon screws. 3 more on this side. This is what they look like. Couple clips below the DVD player, and the whole thing will slide out. Don't forget to unclip the power ports. On the bottom here, there are 2 more Phillips screws. You can also remove the cup holder at this time if you feel you need to. I don't. And it easily comes right off. However, on the back side of it, there's a lot of plugs. Some of them have the safety retention clips on them. It's the red that you have to usually pull up on or push in some weird direction. Usually cannot get them off with just your fingers. And now we can actually remove the radio with the 4 Phillips screws. It's also a 7mm if you have one of those. This one has Sirius XM, which is this mustard color. The white one here that did not want to come out because it's caught up in the factory mount of the radio, which is pretty awesome, is the FM antenna. Most cars, not all, but most cars, you can tell the difference between a Sirius XM and the regular antenna because the Sirius XM is typically mustard and a thin cable, and the FM antenna is typically white with a fatter cable. This one, you can tell, has the video because it has this white harness. The gray harness is standard. This also tells us whether or not there's an amplifier in this car. If it has 8 speaker wires, which are these wires over here on the side, because this is data, this harness is comprised of a power, which is this yellow-red, a ground, which is black, a set of data connections, which is the white orange, white, brown. These 8 wires over here are speaker wires. This whole harness is going to be for the DVD player, backup camera, and overheads. And it is tight up in this dash. This is where the fun begins because this is not a normal double din opening. This is actually smaller than a double din. We are going to have to do some cutting. We're gonna have to cut along here, and then we're gonna have to do some cutting along the bottom. There's also a metal structure back here. It's screwed into the top here. That is gonna have to come out. So we'll have to do some cutting along the sides. That or drill these welds, which doesn't seem too exciting. This part of the operation definitely is going to take a minute. With my mess all cleaned up, the radio opening is trimmed up and ready to accept our radio. We removed the metal bracket. We've opened up the hole big enough for the double din to come in. We've also taken a section out of the back here for the chassis as it goes in and for the wiring because this piece sticks up. There's no reason to not take advantage of this extra space because we have a DRR, which is a brain box, which is going to take up room. We have all the RCAs, so taking advantage of this extra space is most important. And that's it. Most of this work could have been avoided by simply just going with a short chassis radio. However, because we need a DVD, obviously navigation, we didn't get so lucky. It happens.